Hi, I'm Lisa Merkel, and I've been working here at Quilt Beginnings for like 5 years, and I just love it. And our project today is the Kimberbell August project, and here is your little pillow. It's October 31st, and it is so cute and so adorable. So get ready to have fun. Okay, so one of our first things that we're going to do is we're going to talk about our supplies. So you should get from the instructions, you should get your, looks like a fat quarter of the stripe material, which is fabric 2. Fabric 1 is the polka dots. And then you should have a little square of the goldish, orangish glitter. The black leather. And then we're going to get into the toppings and stabilizers. So we have fusible backing, and it has kind of like a rough side, so we know that we want to put it on, iron the rough to the wrong side of the fabric. Here's our Kimberbell topper, and then here's our Kimberbell stabilizer, which has a sticky back. They call it sticky back stabilizer, and it washes away. Wash away topping, wash away sticky back, and then this stays in your fabric. You will want a fabric marker, some tape, and I think the only color thread you will need is like this orange that goes here with your little spider. And I already have white loaded into my machine. And also later on, pressing mat. We have these pressing mats, the applique pressing sheet. They're always really nice too. It's in the container, so as soon as you'll see me pressing with that. I have several of these near every iron in my home. So the first thing that they want you to do is go ahead and cut out your fabrics. You only need, for fabric 1, you only need a 5 by 5.5 inch, and then your border strips. You need 2 1.5 by 6.5 inches, and 2 1.5 by 8.5 inches. I'll go ahead and start cutting those, and we'll probably come back to you later. If it's not 5.5 by 5.5, it doesn't have to be perfect because you'll be trimming it away. But I'll go ahead and trim it 5.5 by 5.5. And then with this one as well, 1.5 by 6.5. Now this one, you do want it to be 1.5 by 6.5. You want 2 of them to be the exact size because you're going to be piecing these. So there's one. So you want to be exact on this. When you're appliquing or embroidery appliquing, you don't need to have the exact size because you usually trim around them. And then this is a 6.5 inch ruler, so all I have to do is line it up this way. And there's my 6.5. Okay. The next cut out of fabric 1 is, okay, so there's 1.5. And here's 1.5. Putting my extra fabric over there. Oh, and I need to make this one 1.5 by 8.5. So I want to make sure it's 8.5 inches. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, 6.5. So I'm leaving 2 inches over here. I'm just trimming this off, so that should give me my 8.5 inches. Okay, so I have my first fabric, 5 cuts out of my first fabric. So there's 2 and 2, and then the one 5.5 by 5.5. Okay, so fabric 2 is a little bit trickier because it is a fat quarter, and they want to be sure that you cut it this way. Let me get some of this out of my way. And what I might do is I might fold it up. So they want to be sure that your stripes go horizontal when you cut. So this is going to be the flange outside your little pillow. So I'm going to even this up. And can I make it with this? Yes. So I need to cut 1.5 inches wide, and one of them needs to be 10.5, and the other one, or two of them need to be 10.5 inches by 1.5, and two of them need to be 8.5 inches by 1.5. So I'm gonna get my 1.5 inch cuts here. And I like using both the mat and the ruler. Okay, I'm going to do my 4 1.5 inch cuts first, because I think that's the most efficient way. That's 3. Okay. And here's 4. And actually, before I move this, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the next section. And I like to, when I cut, I like to have this kind of like right in front of me so I know. So here's the horizontal lines. And looks like I need 10.5 inches long by 7.5 inches tall. We'll say tall. 10.5. Okay, now these need to be cut 7 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay, so this is folded over, so it's double. So I'm gonna, when I pull this off, it's gonna have, I'm gonna have 2 7 inches by 10.5 inches. Okay, so here's my extra piece. I'm gonna put that off to the side. And then here's my 2 10.5 by 7 inch pieces. Those you can put to the side as well. That's going to be the back of the pillow for the envelope. Now we need, going back to the flanges, 1 and 2, I need 2 of them at 8.5 inches. So I'm probably just going to trim this off. And do I get 8.5 inches? I think so. Trim this off, square it up as we kind of say here. I'm getting rid of the selvage edge. And then here's, it's supposed to be 8.5. This ruler's 6.5, so I need 2 inches. And I'll go ahead and count just in case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. Okay, so there's 8.5. And I've got 2 8.5s right here. Put those over there. And I need 2 10.5. So this may not be long enough. I might have to open it up. Yeah, I wouldn't even have had to cut that many. I see that now. The error of my ways. Wouldn't have had to do this strip, but oh well. That's why they give you a whole fat quarter yard for silly people like me. 10 and a half, 2 10 and a halves. Okay. So now I have everything cut. Put this off to the side. And again, this is in 3 parts. So we have, it's a 3-part project, as they say. The first part is centering the embroidery on the leather. The second part is embroidering the design. And third is sewing the pillow. So we're going to move to, it's page 5 in your instructions. This is, again, your finished product, what it's going to look like. I'll peel this off for the first part later. I'm going to heat up my iron, and they want you to put on the back of the white, because especially when you have white fabric, it's good to have this, not stabilizer, but it's kind of a interfacing on the back so that the black doesn't show through, if that makes any sense. See how it kind of shows through a little bit more and turns it gray? That's why we put interfacing on the back. So, and I'm going to cut it down. You never want to have your interfacing bigger than your square, because otherwise it'll get on your mat, or it could get on your iron, and it makes it sticky. And then you have to clean your iron. So I'm going to go ahead and clean, or not clean, but trim this up about 1/2 inch on 2 sides, because that'll be plenty. Okay. And again, Kimberbell and we cut things extra big so that you have plenty. So, but again, you don't want to get this sticky rough side on your ironing board. It's still not small enough. Let me trim some more, because then you have to clean your iron. And nobody likes to take the time to clean an iron. You don't have time for that. Okay, so how did I do? Okay, good. It's smaller than the back, and you always want to iron it to the back. And I've got the rough side. It's kind of bubbly, or whatever you want to call it. That's the actual glue. I'm going to go ahead and iron it to the back. And I don't know if you're like me, but you know, my work surface is always throw and go, and then I dig to try to find what I need. So I'm going to iron this on, and it's as easy as this. And this iron is nice because it automatically turns off if it doesn't get picked up, if there's no movement. So I don't have to worry about turning it off and on. Okay, so I've got that all set. I'm going to kind of get this together. This is for the sewing part, so I'm going to put that away. And I am going to be working on a FOF icon today, because it's the machine that I know. That little line is from Pretty Woman. I don't know if you remember that, but remember how she said, "That's the fork I know." So it's the machine that I know. And so I'm going to use a 120 by 120 hoop, and this should work. They say 5 by 7. 120 I think is 5 by 5, and I think it'll work. At least that's how it came up in the machine. So we're going to try this. Should work. And when you hoop your sticky back stabilizer, and I always like to have extra on the side. I don't usually like to do the whole center, just because I don't know what we'd use this for, but you know, it's kind of an orphan piece of paper, but I let it be an orphan. So you go ahead, and the paper side is kind of down, and the shiny, now it's not really paper, it's stabilizer down, and then the shiny paper is on the top. And they say in the instructions to go around the outside. I just usually do kind of like I'm going to score it as an X in the center. Yep, I just went all the way through. I got really score happy, but it still should be okay because it's still going to stick. It's still going to move. And then that'll wash out after when you're done. So it's still going to be okay. Yeah, you can see I went all the way through, but that's really not going to be an issue. But note to self, next time, don't press so hard. Okay. Okay, so we've got that scored, and we are going to, and I'm going to do the next step before I move on to the sewing machine. So on the wrong side of the leather, I'm going to take my trusty chalky marker. This is by Bone or Bon. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. And I'm going to find the center. Okay, so I'm measuring 4 on the ruler here. And I can make my mark this way and this way. Okay, and I'm going to turn it. As you can see, I kind of messed up before, but you won't see it. So I'm going to make that mark, moving it over here on the 4-inch line here. And I'm going to mark it here. And I think as long as you get it pretty darn close, you know, I'm going to go. So there's my crosshairs, as long as I know that that's my center, because I'll need that later. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and take these pieces with me. Okay, so they say to load in your design, and I don't know if you can see it, but right here's my crosshairs design, and it comes in 2 parts. The crosshairs is the first part of the digital design. So I already have that loaded here on my screen, and I'm going to do embroidery stitch out, and again I'm on a FOF icon because it's the machine I know for both things. And I'm going to press OK, and as you maybe can see, I have white thread in here. That'll be good enough for me to decide. I am one that I do not care for the 6D foot when I embroider, because I can never stand on my head and get the screw tight enough. So I like to use, and it's really loose back here, not that it matters, but I like to use the 6A foot. So it just doesn't come off as well. And I think that's mostly a personal preference. I don't think that makes a difference, but on the 6D, it moves this little mechanism up and down here too much, and it rattles, and then it comes loose, and then I break a needle in the middle of embroidery. So I like to use the 6A. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and start the machine. I'm going to stitch out the crosshairs, and I'm stitching right on top of the sticky. Okay, so it's telling me that my embroidery is finished, so I'm going to go ahead and take that out. I'm going to embroidery edit on here, which they'll make me take my hoop out, which I need to do anyway. And again, this is mostly just for the FOF, I think. And okay, so reason why they have you draw this crosshairs on here is I'm going to match up the crosshairs on here with my crosshair stitch out on the sticky. And then I'm going to line it up. So I've got, whoops, got that lined up. That line is lined up with that crosshairs. And then I'm just going to press it down. And that's nice and sticky, so you don't even have to use any tape, any of that wonderful Kimberbell tape. So, and I actually can see it, that stitching come through, but it's not going to matter. Okay, so next step, I'm going to put this in here. Load this in, oops. And, oh, I wonder if it's going to have me stitch. Let's see what it's going to have me stitch next. So I'm, just to help you out a little bit, I'm moving to page 6 at the very top. Okay. And I see that they want me to put on that wash away topping. So I'm going to grab that. So probably before, I'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and put this wash away topping on, and I'm going to use the handy dandy Kimberbell tape and tape it on. And that's exactly what they say to have you do. And it's extra big, so I'm probably only going to just tape it at the top here and on the side. And again, it's extra big. I don't think it matters which side is up. I don't know if there's a right or wrong side. Let me look. They don't say that there's a right or wrong side, and I've never had to worry about that on any other stabilizers. So I'm going to go with there's no right or wrong side. So I've got that taped down just in the 2 spots. And okay, so I've got the embroidery file loaded. I don't know if you can't see it here on the machine, but it's going to stitch out, looks like it's going to stitch out the spider webs, the details, and it has us using the white thread. I can tell by looking at this white square right here. And then stitch the 31 placement line. I am not going to switch my thread to a gray or whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and leave the white in. And then I'll put the right side of the fabric of the polka dots on top of that. So I'm not going to switch threads for that. Okay, so hi Kimberbell people. I just want to let you know that the machine let me do the crosshairs in a small hoop, but I had to switch to the next size. So for the magic of video taping and all of that, I'm in a bigger hoop. I'm in the 260 by 200 because that was the smallest size that I could get after the 120 by 120. So we are back, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch those spider web details and press go. Okay, so next it's going to have me stitch the placement line, and I do want to touch on, even though there's a few little bubbles and wrinkles in this topper, that is not going to matter at all because it does come off, and I think that's in step 19 that you can just kind of spritz it or soak it and let it dry. I think what I might do is I'll let it dry while I'm sewing the rest of the pillow together. So anyway, but that is not an issue because it does peel right off. So I'm going to stitch the placement line for the 31. Okay, so the next step, and I'm on page 6, and the next step is I'm at like 5, step 5. It says place the 31 fabric right side up. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get this, we might have some issues with this thread. I might have to rethread here later too, just to check. But I'm going to lay it and make sure that all of that 31 is covered. You can't see any of the lines. You don't want that. You don't want that. So you just want to make sure that you have all of those lines covered, and use some of this handy dandy Kimberbell tape to tape it down so it doesn't go anywhere. And I think I'll just do catty corners here. I don't think it comes down too far. And I'm going to stitch the fabric down. It's called the tack down line, tack down stitch. Okay, so Kimberbell friends, I'm going to go ahead and take this out because our next step is we are going to trim around. Whoops, it didn't cut my threads. I'm going to trim around this stitching here. And one thing I didn't mention is it's always good to have some embroidery scissors. So here's some embroidery scissors. I'm going to take it over to the cutting table and I'm just going to trim around this, and because it's too hard for me to sit down, and we'll come back. Okay, so Kimberbell friends, I went ahead and pulled that off and I trimmed around. I didn't have my favorite scissors. I had a duckbill, so it was a little bit hard for me to get through there, but it's all good, and it'll be stitched over and it'll look cute anyway. So the next step is I'm on page 6, and it's step 10, step 8. And I'm still just going to leave the white thread in there. It's going to do a placement stitch for the spider. Okay, oh boy. Kimberbell does this. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and change my thread because we are going to stitch down or tack down the orange glitter sheet. So I put my thread over here. Yikes. And I just found this, this is the Isocord, so it's not as shiny, but it still works just as well. So, and this little spider body is so tiny, so, and it's not going to matter if it's a little bit more of a matte thread or a shiny thread. And I left this on here until just now. I think it was early on that they wanted you to peel this off, and I'm just going to peel it off now. So that's kind of what it looks like. And it's only going to use just that little tiny bit. So I am probably going to go ahead and tape it because I don't think I want to hold it down. That's why they give you such a big piece, because so you can tape it down, right? And it's going to be about right there. So that's all it will really need, I think. So am I through? Yep. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to go ahead and pull the whole hoop out and trim around that little tiny circle because it's applique on. And I forgot to mention this, but they still, when you trim this white, they still wanted you to keep the topper intact. So you can tell that it got a little bit ratty there, but it's still not a problem because it'll still do its job. So I'm going to trim around here with the scissors. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. I've trimmed around that little orange glitter circle. And Emily asked me a great question. So why do you use a topper? I noticed that Kimberbell started using the topper on the leather or the pleather. And it's used for now the pleather and like terry cloth, so that when you're stitching embroidery on terry cloth, they don't sink down into the pile of the fabric. So it's just an added extra measure so that your stitches don't sink down in so far and that they stand out. So that was a great question. So hopefully that answers your question. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch the legs on the spider detail. I'm on page 6 still, and it's step number 12. So, oh my gosh, isn't that just the cutest little orange spider you've ever seen? Oh, that's so cute. Okay, so next step is I'm going to switch to white thread, and we're going to stitch the decorative stitch around the 31. So. Okay, so after that cute little, it almost looks like spiderwebby stitching around the 31, I just went ahead and left the white thread in and stitched that line detail, which I'm still on page 6, and the line detail was step 14. So for step 15, it's going to stitch out October, and I thought it's showing up as orange on my machine. It's white on your sheet, and even in the square here, it's showing up white, but I think I'm going to use orange. I think that'll be a cute touch. It'll just kind of bring out that little spider too. So I switched my thread to orange, and I'm going to stitch out the word October. I just want to, my machine is telling me that the embroidery is all done. So you can remove your project from the hoop. And what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and tear away the topper over here. And this is so nice, it just tears right off, and as much as you can tear off, that's great. Otherwise, the rest of it comes off with water. So I think I might spritz it later on. I think that's in step 19. I think I read that. So, but yeah, you just peel it off. And if you want to take the time to, get in between here, you can. But again, it should wash away pretty crazy easily. And I see a thread here. Okay, so I'm going to take it over to the table and take it out of the hoop. My hoop away. Put that right there. Okay, and then they say, and this is kind of what it looks like when you pull it out, and you can see, and that's not a big deal. And then they tell you to tear away the stabilizer from the back. And it's tear away, so just go ahead and tear it away. And this will be inside your pillow so you don't have to worry about it too much. I am going to do a little bit of trimming of the threads just because it bothers me. But you don't have to. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do this part first, and then I'm going to rinse. It says on, and I'm step 19 on page 7. I'm going to go ahead and use the orange pop rulers first, and then I'm going to rinse it in a cool water until this is dissolved. And this might be washed away too, so I'm not sure if that'll come out completely or not. But anyway, then I'm going to trim. I'm going to use the orange pop ruler. I'm going to use the 6.5 by 6.5 inch. We have these here at the store. Kathy said I could go ahead and open one up, a set up. These are the squares, and they're $49.95. And I'm going to grab the 6.5 by 6.5 inch. So these are really nice because they help you eyeball rather than trying to cut, you know, from the edge and get it centered. This, you can eyeball it a little bit more. So they have these little arrows here, and I'm kind of looking top to bottom here, and right here I would say that's pretty good, pretty even. And what's nice about these orange pop rulers is they have these little notches in here. Okay, so I think that I have this pretty well centered, and like I was telling Emily in between the break, it's going to be on a pillow, so if it gets a little bit wonky, you won't be able to tell. Now, it's good that I have this on a small mat because these work best with a rotary cutting mat. But instead of lifting this up, the orange pop ruler, I'm going to just turn the whole mat when I need to. So I'm going to get these two sides, the left side and the bottom first. So it has these notches that enables you to get into those sides. Okay, so I'm going to hold it there. Going to get into that notch and go all the way over to that notch. Now, I'm not going to move my ruler or anything. Move my mat. Okay, so that way. Turn this a little bit. One time when it's kind of nice to have a smaller mat so that you can turn the whole thing. And this should come out pretty easily. I might have to trim a little bit. Sometimes I don't go all the way in because then it kind of creates a notch in my cutter, and then I have to change the blade. So I'm going to do this the best I can. There we go. Looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to go rinse this with cool water and try to get all of this topper out. And then we're going to start on the sewing part. That's part 3, the sewing part. Okay, so Kimberbell friends, we're back. I went ahead and rinsed this that topper off, and it came out very quickly and very well. That's what I wanted to say. So the next step, this is part 3. This is the sewing part. So I rearranged the FOF icon to the sewing mode, which is, you know, that's the machine I know. So I'm going to put, they want you to sew 1, 2. I'll go ahead and do it just like the book says. I'm on page, or the instructions say I'm page 7, and I'm step 1. So I'm putting the border strips on. So I'm putting the left side one on first. And it does say to go ahead and back stitch. I did read that earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and back stitch. Okay, so I'm going to sew these on. Go ahead. And when I sew, I like to have a leader, what I call a leader scrap underneath. And it just helps guide your fabric a little bit better. So, because then it prevents this little, little tiny nest at the beginning of your seam. So I might just go over this. And that way I can backspace a little bit. Okay, so going for the right side. And I forgot to backspace, but that's okay, because it'll get run over by the next side. And it says to go ahead and press. So I'm going to go ahead and press. Just set the seam. Set the seam. And then just in case, I'm going to use a pressing mat, because you don't want to use the iron straight on the pleather or the leather. So I'm just kind of pulling on that, making sure that it's not overlapping on that seam. That I'm getting the most out of that seam as I can. Okay. And I set the seam already, so now I'm going to kind of move this over. Oops, goodness. Need to remember to pick it up, not pull on it, pick it up. Okay. Okay, so you have, it looks like that. I'm going to do the top and bottom. Okay. I always like to stop and readjust a bit. Stop and readjust a bit. Okay, keep forgetting to backspace, but it's not going to be a problem. I'm going to go over that again with the next border. Going to go over and press this towards the border. Set the seam. Set the seam. Notice how I always kind of press to that side. Normally, a lot of times in quilting, you press to the dark side, but rules are made to be broken, and there's no sense pressing towards the dark side, because then you'd have to press your leather that way, and it would just make it bulky. So just, you just use your common sense. So in this case, we're pressing toward the border. Pressing the seam toward the border. And you use a pressing mat because you don't want to, again, you don't want to have the iron right next to the pleather or the leather. Okay. So here we have this section. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. And the next step is we're going to put they call them flanges. So I'm on page 7 and step 6, 6 and 7 and 8. So I'm going to use my shorter ones. Are these the shorter ones? Yes, those are the right ones. Okay, other side. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the pressing mat and press these toward the outside as well, toward the latest flange, because that is pressing towards the dark side. Setting the seam, setting the seam. And I'm still going to need to use my pressing mat. As you can tell, I don't have to have it on that seam so much, the pressing mat over the seam. I just need to make sure that I have the leather part covered. Okay. I always like to go press that way. Okay. Now I'm on page 7 and I'm on instruction 9 or step 9 and 10. So I'm going to do 9 and 10. And I just realized that I haven't sewn since July 12th, maybe 11th, 12th. I was helping 4-Hers because our county fair is really early. And I haven't sewn since then because I went on vacation. But sewing is a lot like riding a bike. And there's muscle memory with this machine, so that's nice. Line up my fabrics here. There we go. All right. Might have to do a little bit of studying here, so I'm going to set the seam. Trying to stay away from that leather. I'm going to press to the dark side. Set the seam. Okay, so Kimberbell friends, that's the top of the pillow right there. How about that? So now we're going to move on to the next step, and we're going to make the back of the pillow. Okay, so I am on page 8 and step number 11. So the wrong sides of the fabric, I'm turning under. I'll go over here, move this out of the way. It says to turn under 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and just iron it just because I can. It's kind of nice that it's striped, then I just kind of go along that one black line there. And I think they say to do it again, and then sew. Yeah. Oops. Okay. Okay, so they say that they want you to sew down pin hems. Okay, so it says pin hems and top stitch. So I'm not gonna pin. I'm just gonna go. For the sake of time, I don't need to pin. So it says place the front side of the pillow right side up, and I'm going to cover it up. And this is how you kind of like make an envelope pillow case. And I'm going to line these up. And it's going to overlap, and it doesn't really matter which side. You know, is top or bottom. It really just doesn't matter. And I'm going to go ahead and pin because I don't want this to walk around on me too much as I'm sewing this together. Okay, right, so I'm going to sew, 1/4 inches. Okay, so I've got this pinned, right sides together. I've got an overlap. That's what we call an envelope pillowcase. And I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch all the way around. And here I am going to backspace just because I'm going to be trimming those corners off. So pull these pins out. As I go, I've got something gathering, okay. And because I'm going to go over this part a little bit too, because there might be some tugging involved when you go to put your pillow form in. Backspace. Okay. And I'm not going to pivot, I'm just going to go ahead and start over. When I do corners. Okay. Back and forth, because that could be a tension point there possibly. And here too, I can see underneath. Okay, so in your instructions, it says to trim corners. It's always a good thing to trim your corners. That way it alleviates a lot of the bulk So I'm just going to use this tiny little scissors and just do it right here. And they also say, whoops, I just threw some scissors down. They also say to go in about 1 inch and trim, you know, kind of at an angle that way, and do that all the way around. And again, that helps alleviate some of that bulk. And just be careful that you don't trim your stitches. Turn it over, I can see it better this way. You try to get as close as you can without getting those stitches, and that's why I back stitched so that it caught it there. All right. So yeah, after you have trimmed your corners and trimmed in a little bit, you know, at an inch on each side, and alleviated some of that bulk, then they want you to turn your pillowcase, or your little pillow cover, right side out. And you would think that in a quilt store I could find a turning tool or a purple thing. I couldn't find a purple thing or anything. So I think I'm going to use the end of this eraser here. Just kind of get that bulk out there. And it's not as stable. Okay, so I'm going to use this, but I'm going to try not to poke it through too hard. I'm going to see how I'm getting that right to the edge. I'm going to use my finger first and make sure it's closed. I'm gripping it. You should see the white knuckle grip I have on this so that I don't go through. Got a nice corner there. Now I'm going to go over and press this, and it says to press it on the back side. And I might try to get it on the edge there too. And then I need to top stitch around this flange, and then we'll stuff our pillowcase, or pillow form in. Okay. Well, that's heating up. Okay. I know it's not very sanitary, but I kind of get my fingers a little bit damp. And I kind of massage this to the edge. And I can't do it with dry fingers, so. And I don't really want the black part to come showing through, but it's not so bad if it is. And I'm trying to prepare it so that it's ready. I can top stitch this together. When I first read that, it was like, yikes, they want me to, top stitch it together, but then I realized that this is going to be your flange. This is where the end of your pillow is going to be, right here. So it all makes sense and comes together real well. Okay, so Kimberbell friends, I am going to switch to a different foot. Now we do have, for the icon and for most machines, there is a stitch in the ditch, but I don't want to take the time to try to find one. So I'm just going to use this, and what I'm going to do, when you stitch in the ditch, you just try to get right, and I'm so used to, you want to get your needle right on the edge. I'm going to lift up here. of the fabric. And so you want to stitch right in this ditch. I don't know if you can see it, but most of you know what stitch in the ditch is. And I'm going to go kind of slow here at first so I can get a couple of forward stitches and back stitches. Just to kind of set it. Go backwards one. And I am going to go around this corner because I didn't quite start at the corner. Okay. This is all done. I'll put this in the pillow form, and you have a very cute Halloween pillow. Okay, so in your, it doesn't come in your kit, but we have the pillow forms here. They're $9.99. They are made by Kimberbell. I'm just going to go ahead, take it out, and I think it's just best to go kind of fold it like that, fold it in half. And again, remember how I said, you know, there might be some strain on that, those edging, those threads there on the pillow envelope part. And do I have some? But you just kind of work it in. And oh my gosh, that's pretty crazy cute. Okay.